Hello, I'm here in my car because that's how I roll, and welcome back to Real World Magic, where we make your life more magical. My name's Neil Trigger, I'm going to be your host, and recently on Instagram I uploaded this video.
Now I probably should have shown you that there are no propellers in this at all, and there's no connections either to the baseboard. But you can always say, stir yourself, and the drink will start to stir. Check that out, isn't that cool?
Okay, so I think it's pretty cool. The drink stirs itself. It can be triggered by a magic wand or an incantation. It's going to be really awesome. That's kind of what makes this really neat. But for now, how do I do what I did in the video?
I could teach you how to do it.
Now, before I start laying out the tools, I want to explain the basic principle of this.
We're going to use magnets.
What do you mean?
Now while I said that we don't need any propellers, we do need a fan. Now this one I've rigged up to a simple 9-volt battery supply with an on-off switch. When you turn it on, the fan spins, just per a normal fan. This is a computer fan that I've repurposed and cut these blades off. The reason we've cut the blades off is because we don't want them catching on the hardboard. Now you may be able to see these silver bits just here. They're magnets and they spin very, very close to the hardboard to induce a magnetic vortex, which sounds complicated.
How do you do that?
I'll show you.
We're going to start with two magnets. One has the north pole facing up and the other one has the south pole facing up. And that's important because we're going to use one of these things. It's a magnetic flea, which is basically like a bar magnet. And when this fan spins, it will induce that vortex in the flea, because the north will be chasing the north and the south will be chasing the south, and so it gets this thing to spin. Here's an example of a needle spinning on top. It's basically the same idea, but with a bar magnet it's a bit more powerful, and we're going to need that when we're going to put hardboard on top. Okay, so let's keep the needle in the main circle area here that's delineated there. There's also a little mini circle which I hope you can see on camera. Now if you put the magnet near that little circle, this is when it starts the reed switch. Now the battery doesn't need a switch because the reed switch is going to act as our on-off. So as you can see, all I need to do is to bring the magnet a little bit close to that circle and it actuates the reed switch. Now this is how a reed switch works. Basically you've got two wires that are not connected at the time inside a glass bubble. And when the magnetic field gets pushed against that glass bubble or comes close to it, both wires are attracted to the magnet and then they get pressed against the wall of the glass bubble and then they connect and then it makes a circuit. Okay, so it's probably a good time to start laying out some tools. We'll start with a computer fan. This one's rated for 12 volts. It's actually not going to be used as 12 volt though, but I'll come back to that later. There's some magnets. You only need 3 of these. And then we've got a reed switch that gets actuated by the magnet. The reed switch looks like that. Like I said, kind of a glass bubble with 2 wires inside. Nothing too clever about that, but they are quite fiddly. We'll just put that down there for a minute. So in order to stick the magnets to the fan, we're going to need some hot glue. Here I've got a hot glue gun with a stupidly long glue stick, but it saves changing it, so we'll keep it for now. Then we've got the battery connector with a positive and negative wire. You're not going to need a switch because the reed switch is going to act like that. Then we need a soldering iron to make sure that all of that gets stuck together. And we're going to need a helping hand because I'm rubbish at soldering. Next you're going to need some solder. That can either come in a small roll like that or as a big one like this. Then you're going to need a whole load of different resistors. Like I said, I only used a 10 ohm, but you might need something different, so that's why I'm laying out lots of them, because you might need to experiment a little bit. To make sure that everything looks pretty and to make sure it's insulated, we're going to use some heat shrink tubing with a heat gun. The next thing we're going to need is a magnetic flea, which looks like this. It's basically a bar magnet covered in PTFE plastic, so it's not going to react to anything, and it's totally food safe as long as you don't swallow it. It's got a south pole and a north pole, and what that means is that it will then stick to the magnets on the computer fan. We're also going to need a 9-volt battery. It's important that this is a 9-volt even though it's a 12-volt fan. So you can see here 12 volts. Now this means that it will slow the fan down, because if it goes too fast, that flea will ping off all over the place because it just won't be able to keep up. So we need to slow that down. and that's what the resistor's there for, as well as this little chap. You're also going to need a jam jar. I filled it with water so that once it's working you can see the vortex yourself, and the reason I've chosen a jam jar rather than a glass is because the bottom is a lot thinner, and you're going to then put that on top of the hardboard. Now the hardboard is going to be needed as well. It's just fairly thin, and you can get that from any scrap drawer that you might have or anything like that. It's going to be doubled up on two sides, so this side and this side, or that side and that side, whichever. Just make sure it's going to be doubled up. And then you're going to need some blades here cut off so that it doesn't clash on here. And the reason being is you want those magnets to get as close to the hardboard as you possibly can. So this is the basic wiring diagram. It starts off with the battery with the positive and negative. You come out of the positive into a switch. Now this is a reed switch rather than just a normal switch, but it doesn't really make much of a difference, to be honest. So once that connection is made, the current then comes down and straight into the resistor here. Now the resistor then is normally a 10 ohm, or at least it was for my motor. It's written sort of like that, pardon the handwriting. Once it comes out of the resistor, it then goes straight into the motor. So the resistance is there to slow it down, and the motor then goes back to the negative terminal. Now I've cut straight to the jam jar with the magnetic flea inside, because if you want to see videos of me soldering stuff you can always click on this video, which I've linked up in the top right hand corner of the screen, and that one's for my magic mushroom display video which I recorded and uploaded a couple of weeks ago. But I just thought that this was quite a cool demonstration of how that vortex works. It starts making a mini tornado inside the glass. Groovy. Once you've wired it up as per the diagram, make sure that the reed switch is encapsulated within the glue, and that the glue then sticks hard to the actual board. And the reason being is that this needs to be as close to the board as possible, so that when you do put the magnet on here, it will start the motor running. Thanks very much for watching, guys. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe for more of the same, and click the bell button to be notified of future uploads. Thanks again. See you next time.